M is for marshmallow, a sunroof for your house, and iPhones forever. Tech News Tonight is next.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Tonight, episode number 404 for Monday, August 17th, 2015. This episode of Tech News Tonight is brought to you by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost automated investment service that is the most sophisticated way for you to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or you're just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/TN2 to sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/TN2. Welcome. I am Megan Morrone. Let's get into today's big tech news. Marshmallow, 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 marshmallow. It's a fun word to say, but harder to say if you have a marshmallow in your mouth when you're trying to say it. Marshmallow is also the name of the newest Android operating system. Now, all Android operating systems are named after tasty treats, not desserts, according to a 6-minute video I watched this afternoon. Joining us to discuss the new name is Ron Richards, host of All About Android here on our network. Welcome, Ron.
Hey, Megan, how you doing?
I am good. So have you eaten some marshmallows today in celebration?
I have not, but it made me miss the wonderful Malamars that I used to eat as a child, which are wonderful chocolate-covered marshmallows. But yeah, no, this is a huge day. This is the day that we've been waiting for since Google I/O, and then they finally announced the name of the new version.
I have not eaten any marshmallows, but it did make me hungry just thinking about this all day. And I do have some questions for you. Now, this is Android 6.0 Marshmallow, and the names go in order alphabetically, but M is not the 6th letter in the alphabet. And Cupcake was the first Android that was named after a tasty treat. Can you explain this to me?
Well, I can't explain the logic behind it, but I can give you some facts. Actually, the first name was an unofficial name of Android version 1.1 was called Petit Fours or Petit Fours or whatever. Petit Fours.
That doesn't begin with A.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. But then they with Android version 1.5, they started naming the versions after dessert foods with Cupcake. Unknown as to why they started with Cupcake, but they have, and the version number doesn't actually, like you said, doesn't reflect the letter in the alphabet. You know, like version 1.6 was donut, and then version 2 was eclair, and version 2.2 was froyo. So the naming structure of Google as to why it gets a dessert name or doesn't is unknown to us. But I think the bigger question or the bigger surprise here was that I wasn't expecting this to be Android version 6.0. I thought this was going to be maybe Android version 5.2 or 5.5 or something like that, because we were so early in the life cycle of Lollipop, which was Android version 5.0. The fact that they decided to make it 6.0 was really surprising.
Why do you think they decided to skip all the way to 6?
I don't know. I mean, it made sense at Android 5.0 with Lollipop because Lollipop was such a big change to the operating system, starting from the UI with the new material design approach all the way deep into the actual operating system itself. And I guess they're looking at what's going on with Android 6 and some of the the updates and the changes that have become with the operating system and feel that it's worthy of a full version update. They are putting in a lot of new features into Android 6.0. Like we saw it back at Google I/O. I think last time I was on the show talking to you was for Google I/O. We're going to see more, enhanced permissions around apps. They're finally supporting fingerprint support within the operating system. They announced Android Pay, deep links into apps, and a lot of updates around the power and charging side of things. So I guess Google just said, hey, this is a full version, so we're going to go 6.0. So that's fine by me, but I was surprised.
So what are you most excited about, the things that are going to be in Marshmallow?
I'm most excited about the power, the battery life and power adjustments that they've been making, that they talk about they've been making or planning to. I feel like with every version of Android, they always highlight battery usage as one of the key things that they're going to fix. And everybody wants to get the most battery life they can out of their phones. And it seems with every version, all of us Android users complain about how it sucks our battery dry and the battery power management is awful. They claim to be fixing it with Android. With Android, I got used to say Marshmallow with 6.0 and Marshmallow. There's a specific feature within 6.0 called Doze, which will use your phone's accelerometer to detect when the phone is technically in standby. So, for example, when I put my phone down on the nightstand when I go to sleep at night, and the phone doesn't move for 6 hours, the operating system will detect the fact that the phone hasn't moved and move it into a standby mode, which is using much less power consumption and will extend the battery life. My co-host on All About Android, Jason Howell, has the developer preview of Android 6.0 installed on one of his devices, and he said the Doze feature does what they said it will, and it's changed the world as far as the life of the battery. So that's the one thing I'm the most excited about.
What about Android Pay? Are you going to use that, do you think?
Well, I've been using Google Wallet anyway, yeah. I mean, I'll just start using Android Pay because Android Pay is basically kind of an extension built on top of the already pre-existing Google Pay functionality. I feel like Android Pay was more of just a marketing play to keep up with the Apple Pay and the Samsung Pay and all the other movement towards kind of one tap payment systems. But yeah, I'll definitely use it. My local Walgreens has it. And I'm sure any other store that has it, I'll gladly use that as opposed to take my wallet out.
I still feel a little bit, especially when I use my watch to use Apple Pay, I still feel like I'm getting away with something. Like I'm not actually buying something.
Well, I'm sure the receipt and the deduction from your bank account will prove it to you.
Right. But it's the same way when you used to first shop online. It's like, oh, it's not really buying because you're not in a store. But yes, it is. The deduction from my wallet.
Until you're broke and have no money.
Exactly. So now, who's in charge of Android with the restructuring of Google into Alphabet? Did that change at all?
Well, that hasn't changed. Luckily, the person at Google who's been in charge of Android to date has been Sundar Pichai, who you probably heard is now the new CEO of Google. But as part of the restructuring, the organization of Google kept Android as well as YouTube and some of the other, the search and other big, kind of web-based or data-based business units. There hasn't been any mention of somebody being assigned the head of Android to report into Sundar. So we only assume that Sundar Pichai is still leading the Android effort, and he's been so involved and so instrumental to a lot of the changes that we've seen on Android in the past couple of years. I hope that stays the same, but that's definitely something we're keeping an eye on as the new world of Google develops. I got to imagine he's going to be super busy running the whole organization, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a new head of Android step in at some point.
But there's no separate, Android's not a separate company. There's not going to be a new CEO just of Android.
Correct. Yeah, it's still just a product under the Google company's portfolio. And if anything, we'll see a head of Android or a director of Android or some sort of in charge of that product. But they're not spinning Android out as a separate company yet.
So it's been exactly a week since Google made the Alphabet announcement. Have you noticed any changes, any notable changes since they've really just posted that blog entry. They haven't really added to it at all. Have you noticed any changes in anything as you've been following the Google or Android news?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that I've seen is we've finally seen all the Alphabet jokes die down on Twitter. So that's a step in the right direction. They've accepted it, and now they've made the jokes and they've moved on. But aside from that, no, I haven't noticed anything noticeable as of yet. I think it's just way too early. I think you're going to see a lot of inconsistency over the next few months as they shift whether they're copyright lines and data, like any sort of data that's presented on the web, because I imagine it says Google Inc. everywhere, and it's going to take a while to have the cascade effect of changing it to Alphabet and all that sort of stuff. But as of right now, there hasn't been any immediate, like the sun still rose the next day and the world was the same. I imagine that, I've talked to a couple of people who work at Google and kind of asked them, I was like, all right, so, how are things, big day, crazy stuff, how's it going? And they're like, yeah, it hasn't really affected us yet. So I guess we'll see how it plays out.
So today, Google also announced Project Sunroof, a new project designed to determine how much you would save if you got solar on your roof. What's in it for Google with this? Any ideas?
That's a good question. It's super cool, and if you haven't played with it or haven't gone to check it out, I would. I gotta imagine this is part of a humanitarian, do no evil, save the world kind of play on Google's side, where they've got all this data that is just in their servers, particularly around mapping. And Project Sunroof is tied directly into the Google Maps program. And they're able to somehow detect how much sunlight any building is getting around the world and tell you how much you'd save if you had installed solar panels. So I imagine it's the idea of, we've got this technology, let's put it to good use and help move people towards solar energy.
So we should say it's not available in many places yet. It's available in San Francisco, I think Boston. It's not available out here in Petaluma, but it is available where you are in San Francisco. And I think before the show you put in your address, and it said that the people who own the building you live in would. I mean, I don't remember the number, but it was a lot of money they would save.
Yeah, no. Apparently, my building gets over 1,800 hours of usable sunlight per year. And that's based on day-to-day analysis of weather patterns. And my building's got 2,600 square feet available for solar panels, and that would equal $13,000 in savings annually on over a 20-year lease. Sadly, I don't own my building, so I can't make any of those decisions. But if I did, I would totally put up solar panels because I just, I feel as if, anything that we can do to help minimize our dependence on the current energy solutions that we have now, I'm all about doing. So even if it is a little expensive to do the installation, but I will let my landlord know and send the link and see what they say.
Yeah, we have solar panels on our house. We've had them for maybe 3 years and finally paid off the enormous loan that we had to take out in order to put them on. And they've sort of, we don't really pay much. It's, it does feel good to use solar, but it was sort of an investment. If we were going to sell our house, we hoped that someone would want to buy them more. We found that that wasn't necessarily true when we put our house on the market. But yeah, what I would like to do is I want one of those Tesla batteries that you can control it yourself, because I really have no idea if PG&E is, paying me what the solar is actually worth.
Yeah, and that's really the whole thing. And I don't know as much about this world as some. I have a couple of friends who are really into the energy and power world and stuff like that. But given that whether it's Project Sunroof or what Tesla's been doing with their batteries, or there's other companies, particularly in the Bay Area, here in San Francisco, there's a lot more innovation around technology and things like that than other cities. But I imagine that seeing what other companies are doing and seeing those options is going to give us more and more direct control over how we manage both the power we consume as well as the power we generate. And thinking about down the road, having being able to control that and fluctuate and control how much power you give back to the grid and how much you take from the grid is, as long as I've lived, I've gotten a power bill and you pay it blindly and you never ask any questions. But having a little bit of control is going to be a different world. And so it's interesting to see it go in that direction.
Definitely. And it's also interesting just to see how much Google knows. Just that they know how, if my neighbor's trees are growing and blocking the sun, and it's like, and that they can use that information for good. Yeah.
And we know, like, it's funny, we've joked for years that Google has all this information about us, but we're seeing now applications, that, like, there's kind of like the Google, you probably talked about it a couple of weeks ago on the show, the whole, the interface in your account under Google where you can see where you've been on Google Maps based off where, walk around. We knew they had that data. Now they're giving us access to it. I think it's awesome because I love living a data-minded lifestyle and knowing, going back in time and seeing where I went and stuff like that is really neat. Of course, there's the obvious security issues and people not wanting people to know and all that sort of stuff, which I totally understand. And you can opt out of a lot of it. But it's really interesting to see Google revealing what they actually do know and what data they are collecting and then giving us practical applications to use it with. They're not just trying to get this data just to, like evil villains twirling their mustache saying, "Ooh, I know how much sunlight your building gets." They want to help us, build a better world, which I think is kind of cool.
Right. So. And all the mapping, that is all going to be used for self-driving cars, hopefully, and that's better for the environment. So yeah, it is that balance of good and creepy that Google is all about.
Yep.
So there was another announcement they made today. Recode reported that they announced that their project Aura smartphone will be delayed. But it almost seems like they showed this off, and it seemed great. But then a lot of people were like, "This doesn't even really exist yet. Is it really a delay? Are we ever going to see these smartphones?"
I hope so because I'm really, 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 really excited about them. The idea of a smartphone with interchangeable devices, so that you can snap off your camera and put on a camera with a better lens, or like you saw in the video now, add a speaker or add a bigger battery, all that stuff, giving you kind of true customization over your cell phone. I think is super cool. I mean, both from a use case standpoint as well as from a design standpoint. I mean, you saw there was a camouflage little thing. It's going to allow a lot more customization to cell phones. It's kind of more on the maker, tinker, hacker kind of side of things, but hardware experimentation is so cool, and the fact that this is even something they're working on, I can't wait to get my hands on. So it was disappointing to hear it's going to push into 2016, but honestly, I'm not surprised given the complexities of the project. I like that they're going for it, though. I like that they're still working on it, that they're dedicated to it.
So there were some leaked photos of some of the new Android phones. Are these sources, do you believe? Which were the photos that were leaked?
Well, yeah. So recently, it's getting to be that season where, getting close to the holidays and where all the companies are going to make their announcements about new phones. Some already have. We've seen new phones from Motorola that are impressive, and Sony, and of course Samsung. And everyone's expecting Google to come out with a next wave of Nexus brand phones. I use the Nexus 5, which came out last year, so I've had that phone for longer than last year, a year and a half maybe or so. The last time they announced new phones, it was the Nexus 6 by Motorola, which was the big old 6-inch size phone that I think is too big. I've been hoping that they come out with a new Nexus device with a smaller display, and that's what has been leaked. LG was the manufacturer of the last Nexus 5, and we've seen a leaked photo of what looks to be the next Nexus 5, a 5-inch sized phone. It has a little sticker on it with the LG logo, so people are assuming that it's coming from LG. There's also been some rumors that Huawei is going to be producing a phone with the Nexus brand, but this photo is not that. So who knows? We'll see. There's always leaks and weird photos and things like that come out before the announcement, and we gotta wait to see if it's actually legit.
Well, Ron, thank you so much. You're going to stick around, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Ron Richards is the host of All About Android, and he is going to stick around, and we'll talk to him a little bit after the break. Coming up, how one ingenious dad hacked Amazon's Dash buttons, and how much would you pay for a free lunch? But first, you know that you should be investing your money for the long term for you or your family's financial health. And you probably wondered how you should do it. Trying to do it yourself, especially the right way, is complex and time consuming. Now there's Wealthfront. Traditional advisors charge huge fees, between 1% and 3% of what you've got under management, plus hidden fees for transactions and changes. Wealthfront makes it easy for anyone to access world-class long-term investment management. You can get started investing today at a minimum of $500. You sign up for an account at wealthfront.com. It just takes a few minutes, and it goes right to work, monitoring your portfolios round the clock and taking action as soon as an opportunity arises. With Wealthfront, you pay 0.25% a year. That's 25 basis points, 0 commissions, and no hidden fees. That's less than $5 a month to invest a $30,000 account. There are no additional charges for any of Wealthfront's services. Visit wealthfront.com/TN2. You can sign up, and there you can get your free personalized investment portfolio. You'll see the customized allocation they recommend for your profile. And just for Twit listeners, if you sign up to invest, Wealthfront will manage your first $15,000 entirely free of charge for life. Claim your offer today at wealthfront.com/TN2. For compliance purposes, I have to tell you that Wealthfront Incorporated is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are offered through Wealthfront Brokerage Corporation, member FINRA, and SIPC. This is not a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing in securities involves risk, and there is a possibility of losing money. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Please visit wealthfront.com to read their full disclosure. Well, today, Sprint said they're abandoning their 2-year contract requirement. Now, this sounds like a good thing, but I have been sold this bill of goods before. It basically means that I'm renting a phone that I don't even end up owning. What do you think about this, Ron?
Well, I'm not surprised, given that Sprint has been losing market share to T-Mobile as they're all chasing after AT&T to be the biggest cell provider or mobile provider. I'm on T-Mobile, and I don't have a contract. I've been contractless for a while now, so I think no contract is good. But this particular plan geared directly at iPhone customers, basically letting them, kind of lock into an agreement where they can get upgrades to their iPhones as new phones come out to keep them with the best phones, and offers to buy people out of their contracts from other carriers, things like that. It's just, it's just Sprint trying to keep up with the Jones, I think. I don't think, I agree with you in being a little dubious about it, but I think it's just, it's good to see Sprint not being monolithic and sticking to just what they've been doing, because clearly it's not working because people are leaving them. So,
right, I would leave them, but I'm apparently in debt for them them for I don't know, just because of this renting phone business. Like once you sign up for it, then you have to pay like $900 or something to get out of it. But so, do you rent your phone, or is it you own it?
No, I own my phone. I buy my phone outright, and then I put my SIM card, my T-Mobile SIM card into the phone, and just use their network. So I've got nothing tethering me to T-Mobile other than the agreement to use their service and pay the bill every month. Now that previously, now in the iPhone world, that's a very expensive endeavor, because when an iPhone comes out, to buy an iPhone unlocked is what, like $700 or so. Mm-hmm. But luckily on the Android side of things, Google kind of led the way with providing cheaper unlocked phones. So I bought my Nexus 5 directly from Google for $300 and just plug in the SIM card and it worked. And we've seen other companies like OnePlus following suit, and they're selling unlocked phones that can just be used with any carrier agreement with any carrier. So that's hopefully we'll see the prices come down on iPhones, but I doubt that will happen. So I'm happy over here on my side of the fence.
Well, on my side of the fence, it's confusing. I guess the iPhone Forever plan means you can trade in your old iPhone whenever a new one comes out, and then you just pay $22 a month. I think if you do it by the end of the year, you only pay $15 a month. But this is only the smallest phone with only 16 gigabytes. And you have to pay more if you want more space, and you probably do want more space. Right. And then there's the question of encouraging people to upgrade that often. Really, I got my iPhone 6 in January, and so I probably will get the new one because that's my job. But the average person, it's not necessary to get the one that's going to come out in the fall.
Well, and that's the thing is that there's never. It's the combination that everybody wants the newest and greatest thing. And they want to get it as quickly as possible. People wait in line to get it, and all of that sort of stuff. And so if you want the newest and greatest thing, you're clearly, they've built a program now that can give you that, but, at a cost. And so, nothing's ever free. So you got to imagine that, they're not going to do the fully stocked out, max version and then charge so little for it. What Sprint is doing here is they're trying to lock in their customers over a long period of time, and they'll take a hit in the shorthand on the device, knowing that they'll have continuous recurring revenue. Because, if you're building a business, I care less about the customer that just buys a phone from me once. I'd rather have a customer who's paying a bill to me for the rest of their life.
Exactly. And I think the old phones are what they're doing with the old phones, from what I've read, is that they're trying to encourage people that don't want to pay $700 for an iPhone to get them hooked in, so that, they'll have a slightly older phone and they won't have to pay that much for it.
It's the old drug dealer on the playground
First
program.
one's free, right?
First one's free, yeah.
Exactly.
Get them hooked. Get them hooked.
So we've all probably heard the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch, but that hasn't necessarily been true at Google and some other big tech companies, as well as small startups, where all the employees eat for free. The Silicon Valley Business Journal reports that the IRS is advancing the Priority Guidance Plan that intends to modify sections of the tax code so that employer-provided meals are taxed. What do you think about this, Ron?
And the government just ruins everything. I don't know. I can't begin to understand tax code and all the nuances of that, and what the impacts to these huge, multi-billion-dollar companies have, and what, taxing on meals or not is, crazy. What I do know is that a lot of my friends and myself have been, looking, you always talk to different companies about, full-time jobs and things like that, and looking, just go to any San Francisco-based startup or technology company and look at their careers page and look at how they list all the perks. They're all now, it's almost like a one-upmanship. We offer lunch. We offer lunch and breakfast. We offer dinner, lunch, and breakfast. And it's like this idea of like wooing the top talent, because, developers and engineers and people like that are in such high demand here. And so whatever companies can do to bring them over, they're clearly doing. So I'll be curious to see if this plays out and what effect it has on the companies in their, kind of hiring efforts, because that has been a carrot that is dangled often in front of engineers' faces. And the idea is that they're going to feed them at their desk so they don't have to go home.
Exactly. They want to get them there, and they want to keep them there all the time, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, there was a piece that I read, I heard someone compare. They said, I worked at Microsoft for a long time, and there was no free lunch. And Google, I'm not sure what Apple does, but Google does give free food. And it was sort of like the difference between the company Microsoft and the company Google. Like, that's Google's thing. They give away things for free, but maybe it's, better to be an employee at Microsoft. You get other perks, like, food, you can get your own food. Like, it's not necessarily a perk if they're just doing it so that you never go anywhere and you're constantly around your fellow employees. I
mean, that said, it's a clever perk. And if you've got an employee like myself who really likes to eat and you give quality food, like I've eaten several times. I'm actually trying to collect Google offices that I've eaten lunch at. I've eaten lunch at several of them, down in Mountain View, up in Seattle, in New York, and stuff like that. And the food is always really good. So it just, and in fact, there's a couple of startups now here in San Francisco that have been created around former chefs at Google. So it's clearly a vertical, the food vertical, that's becoming more and more important. But they'll figure out they'll either figure out some way around it or some way to subsidize it, so it's like it's a $3 lunch or something like that. And I think that we make the joke that they just want to feed people, so they just stay at their desk and always work. But also there's something to be said. I mean, if you go down to Mountain View, I mean, oh man, there's not much around those offices at Google. Even if you do want to go out to lunch, you think about the time that it takes to go to somewhere decent. So
that's true. Yeah. And I mean, speaking of perks at these companies, it's always fascinating. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we heard about, Microsoft and Netflix, Netflix giving a year of paternity or maternity leave to employees. I mean, that was just amazing. Like, I doubt people would take that entire year. But it just reminds you that, like, people who have talent are really desired, and they're going to continue to be given these perks. Meanwhile, it's very hard for someone without talent or someone just at a regular working class job to get those same kind of benefits.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Netflix and Microsoft are leading the way with that paternity line. I mean, I always thought it was very odd that that there was imbalance between paternity leave and maternity leave. And like you said, it's nice to know that you have it, and you don't necessarily need to take it all, And I imagine after several months of crying babies, some people might want to get back to work. But
several months, 2 days.
I mean, we see time and time again these technology-based startups innovating, in multiple areas, and seeing them innovate in HR is interesting because that's not something I think we're used to as a culture. So it's curious to see how it continues in the environment, whether the big monolithic or regular companies or regular working class companies kind of pick up the momentum that these companies have started.
And speaking of corporate culture, there was the article over the weekend in the New York Times about Amazon and kind of it's just really not so great corporate culture. And there was a lot of, pushback on Monday, and Jeff Bezos said that's not really the way it is. They didn't interview enough people. I didn't really know which way to fall on that. Having worked with a lot of people in Seattle when I worked at Microsoft, that Amazon does have that reputation of being a horrible place to work. But I haven't worked there and I haven't done extensive interviews. But I have a different Amazon story to report. There's those $5, unless you want to comment on this.
I'm like you. I don't work for Amazon. I've never worked for Amazon. I've worked with Amazon. I, too, have heard the rumors that it's a rough place to work. But at the same time, I have friends who work at Amazon who rave about it and love it and talk about how great it is. So I think everybody's experience is slightly different. It all depends on which business unit and where you're working, what office you're in, stuff like that. But, as someone who has, spent several years here in San Francisco and has looked for jobs and that sort of thing, the thing with Amazon always comes up. You go, I heard it's rough there, and that probably is something that they have to deal with. And I can't imagine that New York Times article went, positively through Bezos's desk. I'm sure he was probably livid at it. So, because Amazon's cool. I like Amazon as a company. I mean, they do cool stuff like what we're about to talk about.
Right. So the $5 Amazon Dash buttons, you just basically push a button when you're running low on something, laundry detergent, diapers, macaroni and cheese. I mean, I think everyone wants a button to press and they just want more macaroni and cheese. So that was cool. Or some people just said it's just like another way for them to get more of your money. But they released them about a week ago, and there's a post on Medium today or this week from an ingenious dad who has already hacked the button. He's a startup co-founder, and he wrote a simple program that will sniff his Wi-Fi network for evidence that the button was pushed, and then records a data point when it hears one. He says it's better than any of those baby tracking devices out there because they only regularly track one thing, but he can decide to track whatever. We're showing a video, all the poopy diaper, that when they woke up, all the things a parent needs to track. What do you think about this hack?
I think this is so cool. First off, I love the dash button. I thought it was, when they announced it, I thought it was an April Fool's joke, and I'm so happy to see that it's real. My one comment about it was, actually, I said this to a friend of mine who works at Amazon. I was like, great, now please make it for products I actually buy, because it's a limited, they're testing it with a limited bunch of brands and products. You know, I don't buy diapers. I don't buy whatever brand detergent they had. Like, I want to be able to
macaroni and cheese?
Nah, anyway, maybe box of pasta. I'll do box of pasta. But I would love it so if they would release it so that it's customizable, so you could link your button to any product on Amazon. But that said, you know, I've read articles before this article about theorizing about what the button is doing and how it's, you know, basically, you know, it's the technology of what it's doing is that it's off, and when you press the button, it wakes up, and then it goes to the network, and it's got to do a handshake with your wireless router, and then sends the data to Amazon. To see that someone has in not very long time been able to hack it, disable it from Amazon, and then customize it, do their own thing is just so cool. I don't know if the average dad could do this. I think this guy had a little bit of background that lends it to him. You gotta be flexible with Python coding and stuff like that. But if you can do it, it's a cool little hack to do with it for $5. It's a cheap little device that really you could. I mean, he's using it to track, you know, when he's changing a diaper, when the baby's crying. But there's no reason why I couldn't take one of these and hack it and change it to, you know, to make a button that orders another box of pasta if I run out of pasta or something, you know. So
right, or anything that you wanted to track that you do regularly, and you wanted to mark when you've done it, if there isn't already a device that does that. He says that for diapers, the way he did it was he went through the whole process of choosing, so it lets you choose exactly like what size diaper or what. I think it appears they might just have a deal with Huggies. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they do.
But so yeah, but you still have to specify which size. So he just went all the way through and then didn't do that, so that it won't order unless you specify the size. So you probably couldn't use any of the buttons for this, because I think a lot of the stuff, it's just macaroni and cheese, or it's just like Izzy soda or whatever. You know, there's not so much specification. So I think it would be pretty easy to try to do this on your own and then end up ordering a lot more than you intended to order.
Well, yeah, and that's the whole point of it, right? But I thought this guy, if you're interested in this stuff, go find the link on Medium, because the guy wrote up a really great write-up, and his conclusion is great. That, you know, like he says the Internet of Things is already here, and this is the case. I mean, we're seeing more and more smart devices make their way into our homes to do different things like this, and I think that's kind of awesome. I mean, this guy has a Internet of Things mailing list, and he's interested in that sort of stuff. So I think he's got a little more invested than the average person. But this is the future. You know, it's definitely happening in an odd way, but it's totally the way the world is going.
So finally, you were at D23 this weekend. It's a Disney conference. I'm mostly interested in the Star Wars stuff you saw.
Yeah, D23 was crazy, but they announced, so they had a big panel for the movies, and they showed some Captain America, the next Captain America movie footage, and they showed some footage of Beauty and the Beast and stuff like that, and then they brought out some of the cast of Star Wars, which was kind of awesome. Harrison Ford was there. That was amazing. But then they didn't show any footage from Star Wars. Rather, Bob Iger, the head of Disney, came out and basically announced that they are creating 2 new lands in Disney World and Disneyland, both Orlando and Anaheim, all dedicated to Star Wars. And they're going to be completely immersive environments, so similar to the Harry Potter experience at Universal in Orlando, where when you walk into this land, everybody who works there is in character and pretending that you're on a distant planet somewhere in the Star Wars universe. And they're going to add 2 new rides, one of which lets you fly the Millennium Falcon, which is pretty cool. But yeah, this is Disney going big on Star Wars. This is they're doubling down that probably for the rest of our lives, Star Wars will be an enormous presence.
At least the rest of our lives. But it depends. If Google goes through with the whole Calico stuff and we live forever, then who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But hey, as a Star Wars fan, I'm psyched. You know, sign me up. You know, and they're going to be doing. And of course, they announced this. They definitely didn't say when they were opening, and I can't imagine. I mean, the last time they did a new land was Cars Land in Anaheim, and that took like 5 years. So I imagine like this is going to be like in the 2020s when it actually opens. But in the meantime, they're doing more and more Star Wars stuff, like you just had up on the screen. They're going to be like adding an overlay to Space Mountain in Disneyland to make it Hyperspace Mountain and make it all Star Wars themed and stuff like that. So it should be a lot of fun.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for joining us. Ron Richards is the host of All About Android, which is on Tuesday night. So you will probably go into Marshmallow and Project Aura and all this news into much more depth with Jason Howell tomorrow night.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be a fun show. So check it out.
Thanks for joining us. And Ron is at RonXO on Twitter, so you can follow him there too. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Always fun.
And that is it for this edition of Tech News Tonight. We're on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/Tech News Tonight. You can like us to get links to the show and to be part of the conversation. We might read your comments right here on this show right now. You can also subscribe to the show at twit.tv/TN2. You can, of course, write to us at TN2@twit.tv. And you can watch live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific-ish, 7 p.m. Eastern. And don't miss our morning news program, Tech News Today. That's every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Megan Morrone. Thanks for watching.
Bandwidth for Tech News Tonight is brought to you by CashFly.com.